Hey everyone, so I am here with Ben Frank. He is a millennial who's running for Congress to represent the 3rd District of Utah, and he's competing in a special election to take over Jason Chaffetz's seat. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Ben. Can you tell me why you decided to run for Congress?
Yes, because in Utah and in general, our elections have been kind of vacuous. Like a lot of candidates don't even put up platforms, let alone have issues that they're going to fight for. And so I think that right now is the time that progressives can really win and make a big difference.
Perfect. Now, before we even get started with the interview, I think the biggest question that my viewers have is, if you were elected on day one, would you co-sponsor HR 676?
Yes, absolutely. I'm 100% for a single payer, and I'll be fighting for it every day if I'm elected.
That is very encouraging. That's, I think, one of the biggest issues for progressives and for people who are out there fighting in the grassroots. To hear, corporate politicians say that they won't support this right now or they can't support it, it's discouraging. So it's nice to see a new generation of millennials and grassroots progressives just running to do what our cowardice, representatives won't do. So thank you for doing that. So first of all, can you tell me a little bit about your platform? So clearly you are progressive. I would probably describe you as a Bernie-crat. I don't know if that's how you self-identify, but tell me what issues are the most important to you and what you would fight for if you were elected.
So number one issue is campaign finance reform, because that's the foundation that if we want single payer, if we want clean energy, things like that, we need to get the corporate money out of politics. And so what we need to do, because we have multiple Supreme Court cases to overturn, is we need a constitutional amendment, 28th Amendment, to declare that corporations are not people and that they cannot give to campaigns. And then other issues, a lot of times federal candidates for Congress don't talk about foreign policy, and that's a major concern that for so long, we've been outside of the international norms and international law, and so we need to do things like stop the drone program, stop funding like Saudi Arabia to commit atrocities in Yemen, just a sane and normal and legal foreign policy. I'm all about getting a new Glass-Steagall and tuition-free colleges.
Well, that all sounds absolutely great. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, because since campaign finance reform is such a huge plank of your platform, how is it that you're running for Congress? Because a lot of corporate Democrats will make the argument that, well, they agree with you. However, you can't show up to a gunfight bringing a knife. So how do you run for Congress? What are you doing to raise money if you're against, super PACs and this huge infusion of dark money into politics?
Well, I am refusing all corporate money, but I'm just relying on small donations from a lot of people that have actually sort of given up on the political system, but having a candidate with integrity, I'm able to raise money that way. I feel like there's this big apathy problem, and a big reason is because most people, if they're informed or not, they know that the politicians aren't working for them, they're working for corporations. And so corporate Democrats make all kinds of excuses for why we can't have single payer, why we need to take corporate money. But the reality of the situation is there's a difference between fundraising and votes. And I think that if you have a strong message, that people will come out and support you.
Right, and you certainly do. And it seems like you are on the same side of the issues as a lot of progressives that I see, like Stephen Jaffe, like other progressives that are running and challenging corporate Democrats. So can you tell me, what do you think is one of the main problems with corporate Democrats? I mean, you kind of alluded to this by talking about money in politics, but what do you think is one of the biggest issues that kind of catalyzed your campaign in terms of why you don't feel adequately represented?
Because, in my state in particular, we're a very conservative state, and so there's this flawed thinking in our elections that in order for a Democrat to win, they need to be like a light version of a Republican, which when I go down to the mining towns, to the farming towns, over and over again, people you wouldn't expect to be progressive, they say, we would support Democrats if they cared about the working class. We would support Democrats if they were true Democrats. And I think that a lot of politicians are too concerned about their careers and getting elected, and so they run very weak campaigns, and they try to appease donors, and there's this big mythology in the Democratic Party in general that the swing voters are center-right. They're going to get the so-called moderate Republicans, when really, if you talk to the independents, a lot of them that don't vote, the reason they don't vote is because our political spectrum is way too far to the right. Bernie Sanders anywhere else in the world would be a mainstream, almost moderate, but in the United States, he's fringe left.
Right. And, I think that you bring up something that's really important, because what you're doing is you're actually giving people in Utah an option, because like you said, it's often, if you look at a specific state or, a district, the implication is that, well, they're red districts, so you can't even give them a progressive option. But what you're doing is you're coming in with actual progressive left-wing policies, and you're giving them an option, which is really, I think, unprecedented. And I kind of feel like this is a new phenomenon that we only started to see with Bernie Sanders' campaign, with actual progressives coming in, no matter, what state you're in, and saying, no, I support single payer, I support getting out of these foreign policy blunders that we've been in for years. Since you and I, we weren't even old enough to vote,
Right.
Since our leaders got us into these wars. So I think that it's really important that you bring that up. Now, I wanted to talk about your challengers, because you do have a challenger. The favorite currently is basically a corporate Democrat who has a lot of momentum. So can you tell me about her as well as your other challenger?
Yeah, so Dr. Kathy Allen, I'm not going to say anything negatively about her personally, but from a policy point of view, it's almost difficult to run against her because I don't know where she stands, because he's so vague, hasn't said anything about foreign policy, and a big contention between us is the issue of single payer. She'll dip her foot in kind of flirting with it, but then come back to being concerned about insurance companies. And then Carl Ingwell, my other opponent, I think that he's strong on things like public lands, but he won't come out strongly for like campaign finance reform, and so it's a limited platform.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I think you're describing the typical corporate Democrat who they won't necessarily, not necessarily for your other, but for Kathy, they won't endorse single payer healthcare. They'll say, maybe I support it. And one thing that I've started to see is that a lot of corporate Democrats will say they support single payer, but they won't actually do anything to push us further. I mean, most people don't know that Nancy Pelosi technically states she supports single payer, but
right.
She won't co-sponsor HR 676, and she doesn't think the party should be moving for that right now. So I think that to have someone like you who comes out and says, yes, I will co-sponsor this when I'm elected, that's really important right now, because you have people, in the grassroots that I speak with that are fighting every single day, and they're just being ignored. They say, please, to their representatives, co-sponsor HR 676. And it's not happening. So to see someone that's actually responsive like you, that actually gives me some hope, even in the state like Utah, where it seems like all that the Democratic Party is willing to even try is corporate Democrats. And, your opponent right now has a lot of mainstream support as well. You told me that Rosie O'Donnell even endorsed her and gave her how much money?
I think she maxed out the $2,700. I'm not sure about that, but I'm kind of certain.
Lots of money.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so that to me is it's telling, because if you have the platitudes and the cliches, then for some reason you garner mainstream support, because you're not going to challenge the status quo. But someone like you will challenge the status quo, because you're coming in there and you're posing an existential threat to health insurance companies, and that's to benefit the American people. So I think that that's great. So can you tell us where we can find out more information about you?
Yes, my website is Ben and is number 4 congress.org, and we have options to donate there, and that would be very helpful, because like I said, we're not taking corporate money, and we're facing a well-funded challenger, and my platform's on there. And I also have a YouTube channel where I have a couple homemade videos, and Ben number 4 Congress on Twitter.
Okay, perfect. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close up?
No, I think that's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Good luck. I hope you win. You have my full endorsement. I think that you are making a difference here. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.